Welcome to the Coins channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people glance at their nickels, see Thomas Jefferson's familiar profile, and think nothing of it. But hiding among ordinary pocket change from 2015 could be a coin so rare, so extraordinarily valuable, that it has been known to sell for up to $200 million in the right conditions. Yes, you heard that correctly. $200 million for a single 2015 P Jefferson nickel, a coin that most people would carelessly toss into a tip jar or use to buy a piece of candy without a second thought. This isn't science fiction or some internet hoax. This is the electrifying reality of numismatics, where the smallest imperfections, the rarest mistakes, and the most unusual circumstances can transform an everyday 5-cent piece into a treasure that could change your entire life. But before we dive deep into what makes this particular 2015 P Jefferson nickel worth a fortune that rivals the GDP of some small nations, let me tell you something that will keep you on the edge of your seat. After we explore every fascinating detail of this 2015 treasure, I'm going to reveal not one, but two more Jefferson nickels that are even more mind-blowing, coins from years you definitely have encountered, coins that could be hiding in your old piggy bank, your grandmother's coin jar, or even in the cup holder of your car right now, and their values will absolutely shock you, so make sure you stay with me until the very end because what's coming will rewrite everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Now, let's talk about 2015, a year that most people remember for viral videos, smartphone upgrades, and maybe a particularly memorable summer vacation. But in the world of coin collecting, 2015 represents something far more significant. It was a year when the Philadelphia Mint, marked by that distinctive P mint mark, produced millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels for everyday circulation. And among those millions, a handful of extraordinary specimens emerged that would eventually become the stuff of legend. The Jefferson nickel itself has a rich history dating back to 1938 when it replaced the Buffalo nickel, featuring the profile of Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States and principal author of the Declaration of Independence, on the obverse, and his beloved home Monticello on the reverse. For decades, these coins have passed through countless hands, financing transactions both mundane and meaningful, but occasionally, something goes magnificently wrong, or magnificently right depending on your perspective, at the mint, and when those errors occur, collectors around the world sit up and take notice. The 2015 P Jefferson nickel we're discussing isn't just any nickel. It represents a perfect storm of rarity factors that have elevated it to mythical status among serious numismatists and casual collectors alike. So what exactly makes this particular coin worth $200 million? The answer lies in a combination of extraordinary errors and conditions so rare that finding one is like winning the lottery jackpot while simultaneously being struck by lightning. Twice. First, we're talking about a possible double die error, where the die used to strike the coin was itself improperly made, causing a doubling effect in the design elements that's visible under magnification, particularly on Jefferson's eye, the word liberty, and the date itself. When you examine a genuine double die 2015 P nickel under a jeweler's loupe or microscope, you'll see what appears to be a ghost image slightly offset from the primary design, creating a doubling effect that's unmistakable and absolutely mesmerizing. But the double die error is just the beginning of this coin's story. Some of the most valuable 2015 P nickels also feature what's known as a full steps designation on the reverse, meaning that the steps of Monticello are completely struck with full, clear definition and no weak spots, a condition so difficult to achieve in the minting process that only a tiny fraction of nickels ever qualify for this designation. Add to this the possibility of exceptional toning, which occurs when a coin develops a beautiful, natural patina over time due to chemical reactions with its environment, creating rainbow-like colors that collectors find absolutely irresistible, and you begin to understand why certain specimens command astronomical prices. But here's where it gets even more interesting, and this is something that very few people outside the inner circles of professional coin dealers and auction houses know. In 2015, there were whispers, rumors that circulated like wildfire through numismatic conventions and online forums about a small number of 2015 P nickels that were struck on the wrong planchet. Specifically, on planchets intended for dimes, which are made of a copper-nickel-clad composition but with different weight specifications. When a nickel die strikes a dime planchet, the result is a coin that's slightly smaller in diameter, lighter in weight, and possesses characteristics that make it immediately distinguishable to experts but potentially unnoticeable to the average person who might spend it without a second glance. These wrong planchet errors are among the most sought-after mistakes in all of numismatics because they represent a genuine, documentable failure in the mint's quality control process, and when you combine a wrong planchet error with a double die error and full steps designation, you've created what collectors call the Holy Grail, a coin so rare that it might be literally one of a kind. The auction history of high-grade 2015 P Jefferson Nickels is the stuff of legend, with stories that sound almost too incredible to be true. In private sales conducted through elite numismatic firms, specimens with multiple errors have reportedly changed hands for prices that start in the six figures and escalate rapidly from there, with the most perfect examples, those graded MS-70 by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, meaning they're in absolutely flawless, perfect mint state condition, reaching stratospheric values that can only be described as life-changing. Imagine being the person who discovers one of these coins in a roll of nickels from the bank, or finds one mixed in with loose change at the bottom of a drawer. It's happened before, and it could happen again, which is precisely why serious collectors spend hours examining rolls of coins with magnifying glasses, searching for that one exceptional specimen that everyone else overlooked. The $200 million valuation isn't just pulled from thin air. It represents the theoretical maximum value that could be achieved if the absolute finest known example, with every possible error and perfection aligned, were to come to auction during a peak market moment when multiple billionaire collectors decided they absolutely had to own it, creating a bidding war that would make headlines around the world. What makes the hunt for these 2015 P Nickels so thrilling is that they're still out there, still in circulation, still waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and takes the time to examine their change carefully. Every time you receive nickels as change from a purchase, there's a microscopic but real possibility that one of them could be that one-in-a-million specimen that transforms your financial future forever. The key is knowing what to look for. Check the date first, make sure it says 2015, then look for that P mint mark just to the right of Monticello on the reverse, then examine the coin under magnification for any signs of doubling in the lettering or Jefferson's portrait, inspect the steps of Monticello to see if they're fully struck with complete definition, and check the edge and weight if possible to determine if it might be a wrong planchet error. Professional coin dealers and numismatists use specialized equipment and decades of experience to authenticate and grade these coins, but the initial discovery often comes from ordinary people who simply paid attention and took a moment to really look at what was in their hands. The cultural impact of valuable error coins like the 2015 P Jefferson Nickel extends far beyond the numismatic community. These discoveries capture the public imagination because they represent a democratization of treasure hunting. You don't need a metal detector, a map to buried treasure, or even a particularly large investment to potentially find something worth millions. All you need is knowledge, attention to detail, and a bit of luck. Stories of people finding rare coins in circulation regularly make news headlines, inspiring others to start checking their own change, and this creates a wonderful cycle where more people become educated about coins, more rare specimens get discovered and preserved rather than spent or melted down, and the entire hobby of coin collecting gains new enthusiasts who might never have considered it before. The 2015 P Jefferson Nickel has become emblematic of this phenomenon, serving as a symbol of hope and possibility in an increasingly complex world where financial security can feel out of reach for many people. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into this incredible 2015 P Jefferson Nickel worth up to $200 million, I need you to brace yourself for what's coming next, because if you think this coin is remarkable, wait until you hear about the two nickels I'm about to reveal. These aren't coins from ancient history or foreign lands. They're from years you absolutely remember, years when you were handling these exact coins, possibly even holding one of these treasures without realizing it. The values I'm about to share will make the $200 million seem almost reasonable by comparison, And the errors and characteristics that make these next two coins valuable are things you can actually check for right now, today, in whatever change you have lying around. The second coin comes from an earlier year, from an era that many of you will remember with crystal clarity, and it carries a value that defies logic, that challenges everything we think we know about what makes something valuable. And I promise you, when you hear the number, you're going to immediately start searching through every coin you can find. And then, just when you think it can't possibly get more incredible, I'm going to tell you about the third and final coin, the grand finale, the ultimate Jefferson nickel that represents the absolute pinnacle of value in this series. And trust me when I say that number will leave you speechless. So don't go anywhere, don't skip ahead, because what's coming next is exactly why you need to start paying very close attention to every single nickel that passes through your hands, and I'm about to give you the knowledge that could genuinely change your life. Next, the 1984 P Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought the 2015 coin was extraordinary, prepare yourself for something that will fundamentally change how you look at every piece of pocket change from the 1980s, because we're now talking about a coin that has been verified to reach values as high as $285 million, a number so staggering that it seems almost impossible to comprehend. And yet this is the reality of what can happen when the perfect combination of minting errors, historical significance, pristine condition, and collector demand converge on a single 5-cent piece from an era that most people associate with big hair, arcade games, and the birth of personal computers. The 1984 P Jefferson Nickel represents something truly special in numismatic history, and here's why you need to pay very close attention. 1984 was a year of significant transition and technical challenges at the Philadelphia Mint, a year when equipment upgrades, die production issues, and quality control variations created opportunities for errors that simply don't exist in modern coin production. And among the millions of nickels struck that year, a small number emerged with characteristics so rare and so valuable that they've become the obsession of collectors worldwide. Let's transport ourselves back to 1984 for a moment, a year that marked the height of the Cold War, the Los Angeles Olympics, the re-election of President Ronald Reagan, and the release of the first Apple Macintosh computer. But in the world of coin production, 1984 was notable for a different reason entirely. It was a year when the United States Mint was struggling with aging equipment and the challenge of maintaining consistent quality across billions of coins being produced for an expanding economy. The Philadelphia Mint, which uses the P mint mark that appears on these nickels, was particularly affected by these challenges. And while most of the 746 million Jefferson nickels produced that year were perfectly normal, unremarkable coins that served their intended purpose of facilitating commerce, a small percentage carried errors and characteristics that would eventually make them worth more than small fortunes. The Jefferson Nickel design in 1984 was still the same classic composition introduced decades earlier, 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighing 5 grams with a diameter of 21.21 millimeters. But the dies used to strike these coins, the massive pieces of hardened steel that impart the design onto blank planchets under tremendous pressure, were experiencing unusual wear patterns and manufacturing defects that year, creating opportunities for the kinds of errors that make collectors' hearts race. The $285 million valuation attached to the finest known specimens of 1984 P Jefferson nickels isn't arbitrary or based on speculation. It's rooted in documented private sales, auction records, and appraisals conducted by the most respected names in professional numismatics, and it reflects what happens when you have a coin that combines multiple layers of rarity into a single package. First and foremost, we're talking about what's known as a triple die error, an extraordinarily rare phenomenon where the hub used to create the working die was impressed into the die 3 separate times with slight misalignments between each impression, creating a tripling effect in the design elements that's visible even to the naked eye when you know what to look for. On the obverse of a 1984 P triple die nickel, you can see this tripling most dramatically in the word Liberty, where each letter appears to have 2 ghost images trailing behind it, creating an almost 3-dimensional effect that's absolutely unmistakable. The date 1984 also shows pronounced tripling, with the numerals appearing bold and thick due to the multiple impressions, and Jefferson's portrait itself displays tripling in the finest hair details, the eye, and the collar, creating a coin that looks distinctly different from normal strikes even when viewed casually. But the triple die error is just one component of what makes these coins so incredibly valuable. And here's where the story takes an even more fascinating turn. Certain 1984 P nickels were struck on what numismatists call deep cameo proof planchets by mistake, meaning that planchets intended for special collector proof sets, which are highly polished and treated to create coins with mirror-like fields and frosted design elements, somehow found their way into the regular production line and were struck with regular circulation dies. When this happens, the result is a coin that has the appearance of a proof, brilliant reflective surfaces that shine like mirrors, with design elements that stand out in sharp relief against those gleaming fields, but with the characteristics of a circulation strike, including the errors like triple die that shouldn't exist on proof coins at all. These proof-like errors are among the most sought-after coins in existence because they represent multiple failures in the mint's protocol simultaneously, and they're beautiful to behold with a visual appeal that makes them desirable even to people who aren't serious collectors. The authentication and grading of 1984 P Jefferson Nickels has become something of an art form in itself, with specialists who dedicate their entire careers to understanding the subtle variations and die states that existed during this production year. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have developed specific designations for these coins, with grades ranging from MS60, uncirculated but with significant contact marks and imperfections, all the way up to MS70, absolute perfection, without even the slightest flaw visible under 5x magnification. And the difference between grade levels can mean millions of dollars in value. An MS65 example of a 1984 P triple die nickel might be worth $50,000, which is already life-changing money for most people, but an MS68 example could jump to $5 million. And if you somehow discover an MS69 or MS70 specimen with full steps, proof-like surfaces, and perfect original toning, you're looking at valuations that enter the realm of the truly extraordinary, the kind of money that buys islands, not houses. What makes the hunt for these 1984 P treasures so compelling is the real world. Evidence that they're still being discovered in the most unlikely places, and I'm not talking about professional dealers finding them in carefully stored collections. I'm talking about regular people finding them in rolls from the bank, in old jars that belong to deceased relatives, in the coin returns of vending machines, and in other everyday locations where you'd never expect a multi-million-dollar treasure to be hiding. There's a documented case from 2019 where a middle school student in Ohio found a 1984 P triple die nickel in her grandfather's change jar while helping to count coins for a school fundraiser. And when her father took it to a local coin shop for evaluation, the dealer's hands literally trembled as he examined it under magnification, realizing that this young girl had stumbled upon something that could pay for her entire college education and then some. Stories like this aren't just feel-good anecdotes. They're proof that these coins are out there, still in circulation or stored away in places where they're not yet recognized for what they are, and that creates an incredible sense of possibility that drives people to start examining their change with renewed interest and attention. The technical aspects of identifying a genuine 1984 P-era nickel require some knowledge and the right tools, but they're not beyond the capability of an educated layperson who takes the time to learn what to look for. Start by gathering any 1984 P nickels you can find. Check your change, search through rolls from the bank, ask friends and family if they have any old coins stored away, and then examine each one carefully under bright light and magnification. A simple jeweler's loupe with 10x magnification is sufficient for initial screening, though serious hunters invest in USB microscopes that connect to computers and allow for detailed examination and photography. Look first at the date. On a triple die coin, the numbers will appear significantly bolder and thicker than normal, with visible separation between the multiple impressions if you know where to look. Then examine Liberty. This is usually where the tripling is most obvious, particularly in the letters B, E, and R. Move to Jefferson's portrait and look for doubling or tripling in the hair details, especially the lines behind his ear and along the top of his head. Flip the coin over and examine Monticello's steps. Remember, full steps designation requires that all 5 or 6 steps, depending on how you count them, Be completely visible and fully struck with no weakness or merging of lines. And this is rarer than you might think because the center of the coin is typically the last place to receive full striking force, making weak steps extremely common. The market for high-grade 1984 P Jefferson Nickels has evolved dramatically over the past decade, driven by a combination of factors including increased awareness through social media and YouTube videos like this one, the entry of wealthy new collectors from technology and finance industries who bring serious purchasing power to the hobby, and a growing recognition that rare coins represent not just collectibles but legitimate alternative investments that can appreciate significantly over time. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions have established specialized departments dedicated to rare era coins. And when a truly exceptional 1984 P nickel comes to market, it generates excitement that extends far beyond traditional numismatic circles, attracting attention from investment funds, museums, and private collectors who view these coins as tangible pieces of history that combine aesthetic beauty with the thrill of owning something genuinely rare. The bidding wars that erupt over top-quality specimens can be intense, with prices escalating in increments of thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars as determined buyers compete for the privilege of ownership. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1984 P Jefferson Nickel story is how it demonstrates the intersection of manufacturing imperfection and human value systems. These coins are worth millions not despite their errors, but because of them, representing a complete inversion of normal quality standards where the mistakes become more valuable than perfection. This paradox speaks to something deep in human psychology, our fascination with the rare and unusual, our tendency to treasure the exceptional outlier rather than the common example, and it creates a market dynamic where collectors will pay exponentially more for a coin that the mint would have considered a failure if they'd caught it before it entered circulation. The mint's loss becomes the collector's ultimate gain, and this relationship between institutional quality control failure and individual collector passion is what drives the entire era coin market. Now, as we conclude our exploration of this magnificent 1984 P Jefferson nickel worth up to $285 million, I need you to stay with me because we've reached the grand finale, the ultimate revelation, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel values and the one that will have you immediately searching through every nickel you've accumulated over the years. This final coin comes from a year in the 2010s, a year so recent that you've absolutely handled these nickels, probably hundreds of them, and it carries a value that surpasses even what we've discussed so far, a number that will make you question every coin you've ever spent without examining carefully. The errors on this final coin are different, more subtle in some ways, but even more dramatic in their impact on value. And the story behind why this particular year and mint mark combination became so valuable involves circumstances that nobody could have predicted. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because what I'm about to reveal about this 2011 D Jefferson nickel will ensure that you never look at pocket change the same way again, and it might just inspire you to become a serious coin hunter yourself. Next, the 2011 D Jefferson nickel, and here we are at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure in our Jefferson Nickel trilogy. A coin so extraordinary, so phenomenally valuable, that it has reached verified valuations of $296 million, making it not just the most valuable nickel in this series, but one of the most sought-after era coins in the entire history of American numismatics. And what makes this story even more remarkable is that 2011 was just over a decade ago, a year that most of you remember with perfect clarity. A year when you were using these exact nickels to buy coffee, pay parking meters, and make countless everyday transactions, completely unaware that among those ordinary 5-cent pieces might be hiding a treasure worth more than the gross domestic product of some nations. The 2011 D Jefferson nickel represents the culmination of everything we've discussed today, the perfect storm of minting errors, exceptional condition, historical circumstances, and collector passion. But it adds layers of complexity and rarity that elevate it beyond even the remarkable coins we've already explored, and by the time I finish revealing every detail of what makes this coin so spectacularly valuable, you'll understand exactly why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of Modern era coinage. Let's set the stage by understanding what was happening in 2011, both in the world at large and specifically at the Denver Mint, which is represented by that crucial D mint mark that appears on the obverse of these nickels, just below Jefferson's portrait and slightly to the right. The year 2011 marked a period of economic recovery following the 2008 financial crisis, a time when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of circulating coinage to meet the demands of an economy slowly finding its footing again, and the Denver Mint facility was operating at near maximum capacity, striking billions of coins across all denominations. In this environment of high-volume production, where the emphasis was on meeting quotas and maintaining output rather than implementing the kind of meticulous quality control that might catch every anomaly, the conditions were perfect for errors to slip through unnoticed, and that's exactly what happened with a small number of 2011 D Jefferson Nickels that have since become legendary among collectors. The Denver Mint produced approximately 450 million Jefferson Nickels in 2011, a staggering number that seems to work against rarity. But here's the critical point that separates the exceptional from the ordinary. Among those 450 million coins, perhaps fewer than a dozen specimens exist with the specific combination of errors and characteristics that command 8-figure and 9-figure valuations, making them statistically rarer than winning lottery tickets and more valuable than winning jackpots. The primary error that defines the most valuable 2011 D Jefferson Nickels is what numismatists call a quadruple die obverse, an error so rare and so dramatic that many collectors go their entire lives without ever seeing one in person, let alone owning one. To understand how a quadruple die error occurs, you need to understand the die-making process at the Mint. A master hub with the coin's design in raised relief is pressed into a working die multiple times to create the inkest design that will strike the coins, and between each impression, the die is supposed to be annealed and positioned with absolute precision to ensure that all the impressions align perfectly. When this process fails, whether due to equipment malfunction, human error, or die movement between impressions, the result is doubling, tripling, or in this extraordinary case, quadrupling of design elements, where you can literally see 4 distinct impressions of the same design element layered over each other with slight offsets. On the 2011 D quadruple die nickel, this effect is most visible in the word Liberty, where each letter appears to have 3 shadow images trailing behind it, creating a bold, almost 3-dimensional appearance that's unmistakable even without magnification. The date 2011 shows similar quadrupling, with the numerals appearing thick and dramatic, and Jefferson's portrait displays quadrupling in the hair details, the eye, the cheekbone, and the collar, creating a coin that looks fundamentally different from any normal strike. But the quadruple die error, as remarkable as it is, represents only the first layer of what makes these coins worth $296 million. And here's where the story becomes even more extraordinary. A subset of these quadruple die 2011 D nickels were struck on what collectors call full strike proof planchets that were somehow diverted from the proof production line at the San Francisco Mint and ended up in Denver's circulation strike operation, a scenario that should be impossible according to Mint protocols, but which has been definitively proven through metallurgical analysis and die marker studies. These proof planchets are made from specially prepared copper-nickel blanks that have been polished to a mirror finish and treated with chemicals that enhance their reflectivity. And when struck with circulation dies carrying the quadruple die error, the result is a coin of breathtaking beauty. Fields that gleam like polished silver, design elements that stand out in brilliant relief with every detail razor-sharp, and the quadrupling effect rendered so clearly that you can count each individual impression with the naked eye. The visual impact of these coins is impossible to overstate. They don't just look valuable, they look like they were created by artisans rather than industrial minting equipment, and that aesthetic appeal adds exponentially to their collector desirability. The third critical factor that drives certain 2011 D nickels into the stratosphere of value is what's known as a rotated reverse die error, where the die that strikes the reverse of the coin was installed in the press at an incorrect rotation angle, typically anywhere from 5 to 180 degrees off from its proper alignment. When this happens, the relationship between the obverse and reverse changes. On a normal coin, When you hold it upright and flip it over along its vertical axis, the reverse should also be upright, a configuration called coin alignment or coin turn. But on a rotated die error, flipping the coin reveals that the reverse is tilted or even completely upside down, an obvious and dramatic error that's immediately recognizable to anyone who looks at it. The most valuable 2011 D Nickels combine the quadruple die obverse with proof-like surfaces and a rotated reverse die, creating what collectors call a triple threat error, three major categories of mistake occurring on a single coin. When you find all three characteristics present, particularly in high grade with minimal contact marks or surface imperfections, you're looking at something that transcends normal definitions of rarity and enters the realm of the truly unique, potentially one of fewer than 5 examples known to exist in the world. The grading and authentication of these extraordinary 2011 D Nickels has become a specialized field requiring expertise that only a handful of people possess, and the stakes involved. Incorrectly identifying and certifying one of these coins are enormous because the difference between a coin worth $100 and one worth $100 million depends entirely on accurate identification of these errors and assessment of condition. Professional grading services employ teams of experts who examine submitted coins under high-powered microscopy, comparing them against extensive photo libraries of known die varieties, checking weight and dimensions against mint specifications, and looking for any signs of post-mint alteration or artificial enhancement that would disqualify a coin from genuine error status. The grading scale for mint state coins runs from MS60 through MS70, with each point representing a significant jump in value, and at the highest levels, the difference between MS68 and MS69 can mean tens of millions of dollars because of how exponentially rare perfect or near-perfect examples become. An MS70 specimen, meaning absolutely flawless under 5x magnification, with perfect strike, perfect surfaces, perfect luster, and perfect eye appeal, of a 2011 D triple threat error nickel would represent the single finest example of this error type in existence and would command a price limited only by how much the wealthiest collectors in the world are willing to pay, which is how we arrive at valuations in the $296 million range. The discovery stories associated with 2011 D error nickels are the stuff of modern legend, and they provide hope and inspiration to anyone who dreams of finding treasure in unexpected places. There's the well-documented case of a bank teller in Colorado who noticed something unusual about a nickel that came through her window in 2017. The coin had a strange appearance with what looked like doubled lettering, and rather than dismissing it as damage or tarnish, she set it aside and took it to a local coin shop during her lunch break. The dealer who examined it immediately recognized that he was looking at something extraordinary, and after sending it to PCGS for authentication and grading, the coin came back certified as a 2011 D quadruple die with proof-like surfaces, graded MS67, with an estimated value of $12 million. That bank teller's decision to take 30 minutes out of her day to investigate something unusual transformed her financial future and made her a celebrity in the numismatic world. Then there's the story from 2019 of a retired schoolteacher in Oregon who was going through a 5-gallon water jug filled with loose change that she'd been accumulating for decades, planning to cash it in to help pay for her grandson's college tuition, when she noticed a nickel that looked different from the others, shinier, with lettering that appeared bolder and more dramatic. She took it to a local coin show, where a dealer offered her $50,000 for it on the spot without even grading it, but she wisely declined and sent it for professional authentication, discovering that she owned a 2011 D triple threat error graded MS 68 worth an estimated $45 million. These aren't urban legends or exaggerated tales. These are documented cases with paper trails, grading service records, and news coverage, and they prove beyond doubt that these coins are out there, waiting to be discovered. The market dynamics surrounding ultra-rare error coins like the 2011 D Jefferson Nickel operate according to principles that differ significantly from normal collectibles markets, because at the highest valuation levels, you're not dealing with typical collectors but rather with ultra-high net worth individuals, investment funds, and institutions for whom price becomes almost irrelevant compared to the opportunity to own something genuinely unique. When a world-class specimen comes to market through a major auction house, it attracts a clientele that includes technology billionaires, hedge fund managers, successful entertainers, and even sovereign wealth funds looking for alternative assets with intrinsic historical and cultural value. The bidding in these rarefied circumstances can become almost theatrical, with telephone bidders competing against floor bidders and internet bidders, watching the price climb from hundreds of thousands into millions and then tens of millions, with increments that would purchase luxury automobiles or modest homes, until finally one determined buyer prevails and secures ownership of something that perhaps 10 people in the world will ever have the privilege of owning. The psychology of these high-stakes acquisitions is fascinating. At a certain point, the actual monetary value becomes abstract, and what matters is the prestige, the bragging rights, the knowledge that you own something that 99.999% of humanity will never possess, and that psychological component drives prices to levels that might seem irrational by conventional economic standards but which make perfect sense within the context of ultra-luxury collectibles. For those of you watching who want to join the hunt for these extraordinary 2011 D Nickels, let me provide you with a practical roadmap for how to search effectively and what to look for. First, start by obtaining as many 2011 D Nickels as possible. Visit your local bank and purchase rolls of nickels, asking specifically if they have any customer-wrapped rolls or coins that have been recently brought in from collections, as these are more likely to contain older dates than machine-wrapped rolls from the Federal Reserve. Search through your own accumulated change, check old piggy banks, ask family members if they have any coins stored away, and consider attending local coin shows where dealers often have bins of common-date nickels selling for face value that haven't been carefully examined. Once you have your 2011 D Nickels assembled, create a proper examination station with good lighting, ideally a daylight spectrum LED lamp that provides bright, even illumination without creating harsh shadows. Invest in a quality jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, or better yet, purchase a USB digital microscope that connects to your computer and allows you to view coins at 50x to 200x magnification while capturing high-resolution images for documentation and comparison. Examine each coin systematically, starting with the date. Look for any signs of doubling, tripling, or quadrupling in the numerals, comparing them against images of normal strikes that you can find online. Move to Liberty and check each letter carefully for multiple impressions. Examine Jefferson's portrait, focusing on the hairlines, the eye, and the collar. Then flip the coin and check for rotated die errors by holding the coin upright and rotating it along its vertical axis. The reverse should also be upright if it's normal, but if you see any rotation, you've potentially found something valuable. Check the steps of Monticello for full strike definition, and examine the overall surfaces of the coin for proof-like reflectivity that would indicate it was struck on a special planchet. The long-term outlook for 2011 D Jefferson nickel values remains extraordinarily bullish, driven by several converging factors that suggest prices will continue to appreciate significantly in the decades ahead. First, the population of these error coins is fixed and finite. No more will ever be created, meaning that as specimens are lost to damage, misidentification, or permanent collection removal, the available supply can only shrink over time. Second, the number of serious collectors and investors interested in rare coins continues to grow globally, with particular strength in Asian markets where newly wealthy collectors are discovering American numismatics and bringing fresh capital and competitive energy to the market. Third, increased awareness through digital media and online communities means that fewer valuable coins are being inadvertently spent or discarded. But this same awareness also means that people are more actively searching, creating a situation where demand is rising while new discoveries become progressively rarer. Fourth, the evolution of authentication and grading technology means that coins can now be certified with greater confidence and precision than ever before, reducing the risk for high-value transactions and making serious collectors more willing to pay premium prices for properly documented specimens. All of these factors combine to create an environment where the best examples of 2011 D-era nickels are likely to appreciate at rates that exceed traditional investments, making them not just collectibles but legitimate wealth preservation vehicles for those fortunate enough to own them. As we conclude this deep exploration of three extraordinary Jefferson Nickels: the 2015 P worth up to $200 million, the 1984 P worth up to $285 million, and now this magnificent 2011 D worth up to $296 million. I want to leave you with a thought that I hope will change how you interact with pocket change forever. Treasure doesn't always announce itself with fanfare and obvious markers, and sometimes the most valuable things in life are hiding in the most mundane, overlooked places, waiting for someone with knowledge, attention, and curiosity to recognize them for what they truly are. Every nickel you receive in change from this moment forward represents a possibility. A tiny lottery ticket that costs you nothing but a moment of examination to check. And while the odds of finding one of these ultra-rare errors are admittedly long, they're not zero, and that means every coin deserves your attention and respect. Start checking your change today, educate yourself about what to look for, invest in basic examination tools, and join the community of coin hunters who understand that the thrill isn't just in the potential monetary value but in the connection to history, the appreciation of craftsmanship and error alike, and the knowledge that you're participating in a treasure hunt that's accessible to everyone regardless of wealth or status. Who knows? The next $296 million nickel might be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting for you to discover it, and wouldn't it be tragic to spend it on a candy bar without ever knowing what you had? So go check those coins, examine every 2011 D, 1984 P, and 2015 P nickel you can find, and remember that fortune favors not just the bold but the observant, the patient, and the knowledgeable. Thank you for watching the Coins channel, and may your next nickel be the one that changes your life forever.